Hakika wema nazo fadhili, hakika wema nazo fadhili, hakika.
Welcome to Moveable Dough. This is Steve Danielson. Each week, I get to sit down with a living composer and talk about their lives, their musical journeys, and of course, their music. Join me and take a peek inside the mind of a composer. For a complete archive of episodes, as well as access to the shorter segments called Movable Snippets, visit my website, sdcompose.com/movabledough. Hey, this is Steve. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Moveable Dough. Joining me today is composer and lyricist Jennifer Lucy Cook. Jen specializes in musical comedy for the stage and screen, progressive choral music, and pop songwriting. She earned a bachelor's degree in contemporary music from Brigham Young University and a master's degree in musical theater writing from Goldsmiths University in London. Recent choral commissions include the Cantorum Chamber Choir, Voces ad Opus for Louisiana ACDA, and the UVU Chamber Choir. Her theater commissions include Full House Theatre Company, British Youth Musical Theatre, and the Globe Theatre in London. Jennifer Lucy Cook, welcome to Moveable Dough.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So are you okay if I call you Jen?
Yeah, Jen's great.
Okay. So Jen, I would like to start today with something that you include in your online bio, but I didn't mention earlier. So I understand you have a pretty popular TikTok account. And so I don't have a TikTok account myself. So I had to go look this up. Apparently you make musical reviews of episodes of The Bachelor. So where did this idea come from?
Yes. This is a totally normal thing for a
Totally
composer
normal.
to
Yeah.
do, right? No. Okay, yes. So I had this cute little viral TikTok moment where I made musical recaps of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Are you a Bachelor fan at all? Have you watched it?
I'm not. No, I've never been a huge
is-
reality TV person.
Understandable. I mean, it's so juicy and fun, and a huge part of like the fandom is actually the recaps, like the hot takes on the episode and stuff like that.
It's like watching
So-
baseball. It's the best way, just the
Right.
highlights.
Exactly. And like because the Bachelor is honestly like so operatic in many ways, like the overdramatic extremes of emotion, whirlwind romances, scorned lovers. I mean, it's so operatic to me. And so I decided to recap every episode through music. So I would watch the episode, write the song like that night, and then spend the next day recording, producing the song with my partner Pete, and then like filming it. And I'd put the recap up on TikTok within 24 hours. And it was like such a fun thing, random thing to do. It's not choral in any way, but it's, it's very much silly and fun. And yeah, a great writing exercise as well. And it's fun to see how many people connect through the music aspect of The Bachelor, besides like and they don't even watch the show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I have to say, I watched a couple of them and I was like, I'm really interested in this episode, even though I don't want to watch the episode, but I was drawn in by the music. It was a lot of fun.
I want ABC to just like commission me because I'm clearly bringing in business.
Right.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah, but that's
You
a
should
quick
definitely-
turnaround. So
Yeah.
like a day or two and then the song is out.
Literally 24 hours. That was like the hard deadline I gave myself.
Wow.
Because I'm like, because like as a writer, like we can write and edit and revise till we're dead, and it's like no, I don't want this to take over my whole life. Like just 24 hours, like it will be done. And I think with comedy too, like brevity is hugely helpful. So yeah, but yes, it was a very fast turnaround, and just got those writing muscles really in shape, I have to say.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
All right. So currently you're in Los Angeles, but I know you're not native to the area. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in northern Utah in a little town called Wellsville near
In
Logan.
Wellsville. Okay.
Yes.
And were you in a musical family there?
Yes, my family is really musical. My parents actually met in Mormon Youth Symphony and Chorus. I don't know. You probably are familiar. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I grew up with choirs and piano and tons of music for church. But yeah, I think one of the things that comes from, as I'm sure you know as well, like a lot of church music is that ironically nothing is sacred. Like you end up like arranging hymns into medleys or like revoicing because you don't have a tenor that week or whatever. And I grew up watching my my dad in particular, because he conducted the church choir a
Hmm.
lot and rearranged it a lot. And so I grew up seeing like, oh, you can just make music. It's not set in stone.
Right.
And so I think, yeah, I really benefited just from watching that music get made around me a lot as a kid.
Yeah. So speaking of music getting made, when did you start musicking? Were you doing piano lessons, or what did you start
Yeah,
with?
I mean, I started with children's choirs and piano, like everyone. I don't know. It was very basic. I'm not like a virtuosic pianist or any or even a virtuosic singer by any means, but it was just part of the wallpaper. You know,
Uh huh.
it was there all the time, and yeah, we would like make up little songs around the house growing up, like kind of to keep ourselves company or because it was funny. I don't know. Like I grew up with my dad again in particular, like writing parody lyrics to hymns, like a ton, which is very sacrilegious, but very fun. And so yeah, like we would just make up little songs all the time. And so I don't know that there was ever like a day one first composition necessarily, but it was always part of the DNA.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
were you in the school ensembles as well, school choir and
Yes.
things like that? Or
Yes, absolutely. And my high school choir experience was so formative. That was where I first heard um, Eric Whitacre's Water Night, and that
hmm.
was the first time I was like, "Oh, oh, I see myself in this. I am seen by this piece of music." I don't know how else to describe. So that was hugely formative. And yeah, I when I was little, like I don't know if you, because you went to BYU as well, right?
I
You're a
did.
BYU
Yeah.
alum. Okay, yeah. So you're familiar with like the Salt Lake kind of choral universe a little bit.
Hmm.
And so my parents were in the symphony and chorus, and so when I was really little, my grandma would sneak me into the symphony and chorus concerts at the Tabernacle on Temple Square, and I don't know if that age limit has changed, but technically at the time you're supposed to be 8 years old to go, and I was just this little toddler who was enraptured by it. And I think sometimes we don't give kids enough credit. Like they can handle a lot. So yeah, that was around all the time, and my family's not professional musicians, and I think it was a leap for them to go from, oh, music is fun and something that we do, in our spare time, versus like, oh, I'm actually doing this as a career. This is something that I deserve to be paid for. This is something that I am, risking my my life, my
Yeah.
security to do. Um, that's the leap that was hard to make. I think it still is. My cute mom is still sometimes like, and how are you doing money wise? Like, oh, thank you. So I mean, you're a composer, so I'm sure you understand a little bit of how that feels.
Yeah, I think my mom finally came to grips with it when I got my master's degree. She's like, "Okay,
Yeah.
I think you might be able to do something with this."
Yeah, it's good
um,
use of that piece of paper because it's
that's
not
right.
super useful in a lot of other ways.
So what is it in you that made you want to take that risk? What drove you to become a composer?
I mean, I wish I had a more eloquent answer for this, but I just feel like I would spontaneously combust if I didn't. That I feel fortunate in that I always knew what I wanted to do. I know some people like spend a lot of time trying to find that, and I have compassion for that. But it was so clear for me from a young age that I was gonna write music, and I didn't know what form that would take, and that's still pretty in flux for me. I'm hugely gravitate towards musical theater, and I do a lot of that, and
Hmm.
that's what my master's is musical theater writing, and um, but where that Venn diagram with classical music and popular music, it kind of coalesces in anything that has to do with voices, because singing can tell a story. So that translates for me in all sorts of genres, and that was always what captivated me, is like, what story can I tell with music as the vehicle?
That's awesome. So going back a little bit, I'm always
Yeah.
interested in asking composers what they were listening to when they grew up.
Oh yeah.
What was like when you were a teenager? What was the the number one song for you, or what was the your favorite CD or something?
Oh man. Okay. Well, I mean, I grew up on classical, but by the time I was, in elementary school, discovered pop music and Backstreet Boys, Shania Twain, Spice Girls, Britney Spears, and my mom was such a supporter of music, but also very censorship was a thing, and so of course anything that she censored was like stuff that I was like even more interested in. So the tracks I was supposed to skip on the Spice Girls CD did not get skipped. um yeah, those Max Martin pop tracks were huge for me, but I remember the Shania Twain Come On Over CD was the first CD that I actually spent my own babysitting money to buy. And what was so great about that is, remember when you actually used to like read this booklets in
Oh
CDs?
yeah.
Yeah, and I like read that, like every word of that. And that's where I learned that you could write music with somebody else. Because I didn't actually, I just thought one person in a room came up with it, you know?
Hmm.
So I understood co-writing existed, but then also that Shania Twain booklet had like, it had written out like verse, and then it was a chunk of lyric, and then chorus, and then a chunk of lyric, and then a bridge and a chunk of lyric. So I understood
The
what the
form, yeah.
structure was, yeah, from Shania Twain, and are still fantastic stuff. I saw Shania in Los Angeles back in 2018, so still
Still
super
a
super
Shania
on
fan,
board.
huh?
Yes. I mean, even compositionally, those key changes in some of those songs, I mean, they're incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have loved that stuff.
Yeah. So speaking of co-writing,
Yeah.
you mentioned in your bio that you are also a lyricist. So what sort of
Yes.
lyrics do you write?
I mean,
Is this mostly
all English lyrics.
is this mostly for musical theater, or is this for pop, or
All,
choral,
yeah,
for
all of the
everything?
above.
Okay.
I Yeah, I again, my lyric writing started out as parody. So I started out doing that like when I was young. I remember one Christmas, it was the first Christmas that my dad thought, "Oh, we should buy a fake tree this year." And I was very against this and wrote a protest song about the tragedies of a plastic tree in parody lyric. And it has lyrics that are like, oh, Christmas tree, your branches are synthetic. Oh, how I wish that Santa'd bring a tree that's not prosthetic. Your branches are forever green because they're polyethylene, manufactured on an assembly line, the symbol of our Christmas time.
I'm impressed that you still remember that. That was
Oh,
fantastic.
I committed that to memory because it was a very important, and it didn't convince my dad. So clearly, I needed to work on that song more. I don't
Well,
know.
you just got to think it's just a Christmas tree parody. That's all it is.
Exactly. But yeah, so it started out as like humor, and then I, grew up and started falling in love with boys that didn't love me back, and so then it turned angsty and
Oh
serious.
yeah,
You got to get that out somehow,
that's right.
and so that. And then it turned into like, oh, telling story with song. And then I studied, lyric writing formally at BYU because I was in the media music program, so that encompassed a lot of pop songwriting as well, and really started to dig into it officially. And then when I was in London, I went to the BML. It stands for Book Music Lyrics writing workshop. It's kind
Hmm.
of the London equivalent of like the BMI
Okay.
workshop, and really, that was the tough scrutiny of those British writers was great for me because they do not mince words. There was none of this like, this is great, except they were like, that's not in a perfect rhyme, that. But it was really, really good. And so I think learning how to write lyrics for telling story efficiently applies to any genre. Like that doesn't matter. And I think when it comes to like a more poetic text for choral music, it's actually quite a luxury because you don't have to be in the same way as efficient with you don't have to tell a plot line necessarily. It's just more about like how honestly, how deeply can you dig into those emotions of the lyric. And I think, being a composer who writes lyrics is such a I think that I have a little bit of a leg up in that respect, only because I get to be the one who decides like what vowel goes on what note. When you have like a chord that you're like, ooh, it would be nice if that were an ooh, but this Cummings text is an I or something, like if you were bound by that,
Yeah.
then that's, you have to kind of write around that text sometimes. And I can push and pull each. I can extend a chord to match a lyric if I want it. I have the luxury of taking out like sibilants so that that smooths out the phrase if I need it to at the at a soaring moment or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like being able to massage both text and music at the same, like while I'm working on it the same way. So I really never have a text set in stone before writing a choral piece with it. I'll have sections of it, but yeah, they grow very much in tandem for me, which makes it fun in my opinion.
That's awesome. All right, so I want to turn a little bit to your choral music.
Yeah.
So many of my listening audiences are familiar with the compositions and work of Eric Whitacre.
Yes.
In fact, I just had him on as a guest about 2 weeks ago. You, however, get the unique privilege of claiming Eric Whitacre as a mentor. So how did you get connected with Eric?
I am so fortunate and grateful to have Eric as a mentor. He is amazing. And, like I mentioned, his music has been a guiding light for me, like both personally and professionally for so long, for so much of my, grown up life and, young adulthood. And he's so incredibly generous as a mentor. We connected for the first time in London, actually, because I was living there at the same time that he had his Cambridge residency.
Mm-hmm.
And so we connected there a little bit, and then we reconnected again during the pandemic when we're both now based in Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
And so at that point, we had a few sessions which were actually mainly focused around like mindset and career goals, which has been amazingly helpful, especially because as a female in the composing world, I feel like a lot of my preparation, particularly at BYU, was based around like how to write, but not really how to make a living. And I think, part of that is a little bit just a patriarchal. We don't really expect the women to do this a little bit, I loved my time at BYU, but there is that's kind of baked into just an old tradition that we're growing out of. And so so some of my mentorship with Eric was just kind of getting into his frame of mind about thinking big about what a career can look like, what music can look like, what communicating with people on a huge scale can look like. And that really broadened my horizons. And he was so generous with sharing all of that expertise and confidence. I feel like every time I'm around him, I like fill up my cup of confidence again. And that's just a huge gift that he doesn't even do on purpose, but that's just, who he is
just
as
him.
a person. Yeah, exactly. And he's been very helpful with talking a lot with me about publishing and how important it is to maintain your copyright as much as you can, and diving into different publishers and their ethos and royalties. And he's the main reason why I really my sole publisher to at this point has been Graphite Publishing, which I think because of Jocelyn.
Oh yeah,
Hagan
Jocelyn and Tim.
Tim. Yeah, they're both amazing, but they have a fantastic system of their roster and their curated collection is amazing, but also they treat their composers really well in the sense of royalty and copyright. And I really didn't understand the importance of that stuff till Eric started digging into that with me. And then creatively, we've talked a lot about the kind of things that are in his masterclass. Have you watched his masterclass?
I haven't yet. No.
Oh, I highly, highly recommend every, creative conductor, artist. It's because it's so widely applicable, and he does such a good job of capturing that, mysteriousness of the muse and actually putting it into some concrete, actionable like language that's still beautiful and allows for interpretation. And so yeah, because of that, I basically always start every piece now with the golden brick, which is what he talks about in the masterclass, like pretty much a guiding principle of what makes me want to write this thing in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so like with my piece They Are Mother, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I knew I wanted to use the pronoun they and explore the multiple inclusive versions of the feminine divine. And so that was my golden brick. So before I even wrote a note of music, I already knew the core fundamental. And then I always make some version of emotional architecture like Eric does as well, which is basically making like a map of the emotional journey that I want to take through the music. Like, how do I want to feel throughout this really? And I find this the most helpful thing to refer to throughout the process, because if I'm composing and I ever find myself thinking, what should come next? Like, I know I'm way off track if I am ever thinking that. So, I may not know specifics, but if I know the emotional direction I want to travel in, then I can at least honor that idea, and I have the best chance at leaving my ego out of it and actually being as honest as possible. And Eric is all about integrity in creation, which is so great for a people pleaser like me, because I want to write what people want to hear, but that's actually like the least honest way to make a thing. And so he's really great at pulling that out. It's just such a joy to work with him and soak up his perspective. And yeah, it's amazing.
All right. Well, I got one more question for you before we take a break, and this is completely non-music related.
Yes.
So I'd like to ask, what is your favorite movie or type of movie? If you had to sit down tonight and watch something, what would it be?
I mean, there's the Disney canon, or I was also going to say Singin' in the Rain.
Oh, great choice.
Yeah. Yeah, those would basically be what I would say. Singin' in the Rain, maybe Aladdin, Little Mermaid. I mean, these are such like basic white girl answers, I know, but that's what I love.
No, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll listen to some of Jen's compositions.
Okay.
Welcome back. I'm talking today with Jennifer Lucy Cook. So I would like to point out before we begin listening today that all four pieces that we are featuring feature your work as a lyricist as well as a composer.
Yeah.
So we are going to start today with They Are Mother, which you mentioned in the previous segment, for SATB and piano. Now, I should mention that this piece is a recent winner of the Chorus Austin Composition Prize. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So you talk about this piece as an expression of the feminine divine. What do you mean by that?
I mean the creative spark that is in each of us. Whatever you want to call that. And that I mean the feminine divine in the sense of, because creating is an essentially feminine act, not gendered act, but feminine act. And and yeah, we all have that creative spark in all of us. And so it was important to me to use they them pronouns for this piece, because that applies to everyone. And in fact, also it's both non-binary, but they is also non-singular. So that also felt right. And I do want to say that I consulted, when I was working on this text, I consulted with my friend, Reverend Alex Regan, who is a trans man and an interfaith minister as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would take him sections of text that I was working on and kind of bounce it back and forth to try to really get to the core of this elusive, creative being, God, divinity, intuition, the universe, whatever form that is. And it's a hard concept to pin down in text, but
Sure.
yeah.
Do you get any reactions from people who have a more traditional sort of masculine god viewpoint?
Yeah, in fact, the commissioning choir, the UVU chamber choir in Utah Valley, a lot of them are still identify with like a traditional masculine, patriarch god, and still, it was so cool to hear them talk about the way they saw themselves in this, or even literally their own mothers in this. And um, I I hope that it remains open to that interpretation, because I think there are a lot of right answers.
All right.
Yeah.
We are going to now listen to the Utah Valley University Chamber Choir, conducted by Reed Criddle, singing They Are Mother. All right, we're going to turn next to For You, I Will Be an Island for SATB a cappella choir. So this piece was written during quarantine, seems to be a reaction to quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
You state in the program notes for this piece, quarantine felt to me very similar to other rare times when distance means love, like when a relationship seems to have run its course or when love isn't returned in kind. So is the idea in this piece that if you love someone enough, you'll keep your distance if that's what's required? Am I sort of on the right path with that?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, remember how early quarantine that was like the weirdest thing? That it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not going to go see my grandma like I'd like to. And because I love her, I am staying away. For instance, like that's a very literal,
Yeah.
like quarantine specific thing. But like I said in those program notes, I do feel like it's strange. It's sort of the that old cliche of if you love someone, let them go, which on its surface like doesn't make any sense at all. And yet there is a strange truth in that. And I think, there are times in my life where I've had to let dreams I loved go. And that is also a very lonely, weird act of love.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really cool viewpoint. I haven't really ever thought of that before.
Yeah.
What was the reaction from the commissioning choir on this one? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. The Cantorum Chamber Choir, led by my friend Steve Durchie, they, I had such a great time talking with them about what this meant to them because they they had to perform and rehearse throughout quarantine like separate like they had this huge auditorium that they were like in 6 foot little pods away from each other trying still to sing. And so I think for them it hit on this very personal choir level of we love singing together, we love being each other with each other, and the very thing that we love the most is the thing that we love each other so much that we're not going to do
Hmm.
closely. And I mean, it must have been so strange. I don't know what your experience was like with choirs during the pandemic, but it's such a strange thing that this thing that usually keeps us from being lonely was like taken from us because
Yeah.
and to honor each other, we had to like stay away.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are going to listen to Cantorum Chamber Choir perform For You, I Will Be an Island.
For you, I will be an island, a solo shelter. For you, I will be an island, miles away. For you, I will be surrounded.
All right, our next piece is called Over and Over. This is an experimental round for choir and synth bass. So you start with the text, over and over we fight, then over and over we fix it. So what would you say that this piece is about? How would you synthesize this?
Yes, this piece is about when you circle the drain of a relationship that doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but you haven't quite cut the cord. And I thought it would be really interesting and haunting to explore that concept in a round. Like when, because I've had like girlfriends before who will talk to me about, their boy trouble or something, and we'll go, wait, we literally had this same conversation like last week. This is just a different set of specifics, but like we're still doing it. And I feel like that's a common feeling of when you're just not quite ready to let go, but you still see all the issues and you go round and round about it. So anyway, this was the very, very literal exploration of going around that kind of an issue. And I wanted to explore the kind of major nature of, so like traditional rounds are like major triads over and
Mm-hmm.
over, right? But to pair that with this really heartbreaking kind of it's hard to watch kind of an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's sometimes like that, you have a relationship like this where you like still try to smile through it, or you still go, maybe it's not so bad. And it's like there are more than one emotion at play at any one time. So that's what I was trying to explore musically.
Sure. Without getting too personal, was there anything going on in your life at that time that this was reflecting?
Not currently, no.
Okay.
I would say this is true, but not autobiographical.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify, is this you in the recording that we're going to hear? Is this
This
you doing
is.
multi-track
Yep. And then this is my partner Pete on all of
on the
the
tenor bass?
tenor bass. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to listen to Over and Over.
Over and over we fight, then over and over we fix it. More like a foe than a lover, now you know. What about forever after every high and low? Never thought I'd have to learn a way to let you go. Over and over we fight, 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 over and over we love you, then I love you, then I love you. What about forever after every high and low?
All right, our last piece today is Time for SATB acapella. This is a fun piece where each repetition of the text sort of loses words as it goes, not to mention the clock ticking, tongue clicking. What were you wanting to say about time through this piece?
I wanted this piece to feel like that frantic nature of running out of time. But then, like, sometimes I have this other voice in my head. It's like, if I'm late for something, then this other voice is like, but wait, it doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter at all. And then I'll be like, but I want to be on time, but it doesn't matter. And so there's like this funny, like, so there's a line in this song that's like, time is an illusion. Um, and because I think it is at a certain point, we just all agreed on hours and minutes. They're not anything. And yet you can still feel frantic and like you're running out of it. And I think there's also this layer for me of like getting older and being like, oh no, I haven't done enough with my life yet. I can't believe it. Like there are pop stars who are younger than me now. That doesn't make any sense. So, because yeah, anyway, so I was really trying to get at that, but like not taking itself too seriously either, and exploring like all the different sounds that a voice can make, because a voice can sound like a lot of stuff, so you can click your tongue while you sing at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's what this is about.
Okay, well, we are going to listen to this fun little round called Time.
Time, you can spend it. When you spend it, then you're running out of time. You can save it, but to save it is to take a little time. In a minute, when you're in it, can you feel the passing time? Is an illusion, there's confusion when they tell you now it's time to get older, time to work and time to waste, and there's no time left to hold her, time to tell him how you feel while there's still time. 3, 2, 1, 11:32 a.m. then dinner time. Now to kill, I said I will, and still it flies on time. Not a time you can spend. When you spend, you're running out of time. You can save, but to save it takes some time. In a minute, you're in it. Feel passing time is an illusion, confusion. They tell you now it's time to get older, to work, time to waste. There's no time left to hold, time to tell him while there's still time. 3 to 11, 2 a.m. dinner time. Now to kill, said I will, still it flies, oh time. Not a time you can, when you're running out of, save it, take a little time, minute, can you feel passing is an illusion, they tell you to get older, work, waste, there's no, hold her, tell him, feel there's time, 1:30, dinner time, kill, will still fly, oh time, you can spend it. When you spend it, then you're running out of time. You can save it, but to save it is to take a little time. In a minute, when you're in it, can you feel the passing time? They say time to get older, time to work and time to waste, and there's no time left to hold her, time to tell him how you feel while there's still time. 3, 2, 1, 11:32 a.m. then dinner time. Now to kill, I said I will, and still it flies and flies, oh fly on time.
So, Jen, what are you working on now that you can tell us about?
A couple of really cool things that I am excited about. The over and over that you heard is kind of an experiment with choir and synth bass. And I was exploring that because I'm really interested in the combination of synth bass and choir. So I'm working on a larger suite of pieces with that instrumentation. And right now they're all based around the zodiac. And so I'm exploring multiple movements based on the different constellations. And the final movement of the piece is kind of a game where, depending on the time at the date of the concert and what the sky looks like, that determines what order the pieces all go in.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. To be super honest, it is not completely fleshed out yet. So that is very much an in progress idea. But yeah, so that uses choir and synth bass, and I'm really excited about that. Dream scenario is to perform that in a planetarium, because like that dome structure would be so interesting acoustically too. Anyway, so manifesting that in the world. I'm also working on I'm working on a Christmas piece, hopefully to get published in the next few months in time for possible performance this year. And I am also I have 2 musicals in progress. One that's a short piece being performed in Chicago in August, and then another piece that, another musical called Aurora, that is about the Northern Lights. And yeah, we got shortlisted for the O'Neill residency for this summer, but haven't heard back yet. They haven't announced yet. So
Cross your fingers.
Yeah, please send the good vibes for that. Anyway, so yeah, musicals and choir all the time.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So where can my listeners learn more about you? Where are you located online?
On all the social platforms, I'm at Jen Lucy Cook, JenLucyCook, or my website, jenniferlucycook.com.
Fantastic. Well, hey, listeners, if you are enjoying today's episode and would like to show your appreciation, please become a supporter of the show. Even a small contribution can make a huge difference to my ability to keep this podcast running. I'd like to give a big thank you to those who have already become supporters. For just as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the music moving. Visit anchor.fm/movabledough and click support to become a supporter today. Well, Jennifer Lucy Cook, it has been a pleasure to talk to you and to get to know you. Thank you for joining me on Moveable Dough.
Thank you so much for having me. And don't for one second think that I didn't spot the wicked book on the piano behind you. I see you.
Oh, I'm a musical theater buff. I won't deny it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I love this project and everything that you do to forward choral music in the world. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you so much. My guest today was composer Jennifer Lucy Cook. If you have a recommendation for a future guest or an idea for the show, please email me at movabledough@gmail.com. This is Steve Danielson. Keep the music moving.